What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now, Back to the Past. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Mafia 3. We have completed the trilogy here leading into Mafia the Old Country. The last couple of weeks, I did videos on Mafia 1 and 2, and let me tell you something. It took me far longer. Even though I did know the length of 3 going into it, it took me a long time. I'd say 40-plus hours, probably like in the 41, 42 range, to beat Mafia 3. I actually completed all the DLC as well, and I left things on the table. There became a point in this game where I have like 15 side objectives that I just said, you know what, I was doing them. I was kind of going almost for the 100% at some point in the game, and I said, you know, it's too big, so I have to stop, and that's just kind of my clocking in hours as of right now. But I want to talk about it. Let's talk about it in 2025. Now, this game came out, a while ago, and I got it when it first came out, and I only had played like 5 hours. This will contain spoilers, including literally what I'm just about to say. So I vaguely remember the first 5 hours of this game from like the vault heist, which actually does age extremely well. And the game has a couple of these moments I think are really good, as well as Lincoln's family being wiped out. Now, I kind of forgot that, but once they were in the bar and they were about to go for the drink, I said, oh my dear God, I remember this. And then obviously they get wiped out. So some things I remembered. I think the structure of the game I remembered, and I've also seen so much, from, hey, every area's got like the same kind of things that you do. I experienced it a little when it first came out, but I barely played it. So I would like to consider this really the first time playing it, but honestly, more importantly, let's give this game a second chance. Does it hold up? All of that stuff that we normally do here. And to be honest with you, it might not be the most exciting response of all time. Here's the thing. I overall leave not liking this game all that much. I think, does it have some things that are very strong? Yes, it does. This is not a terrible game. I wouldn't even consider it a bad game, but it's probably the most average game I think you could throw together, and it's disappointing to see. Now, hindsight, it being 2020 and all that stuff being behind us, right? I'm glad they learned some lessons and they're going into the old country and they're saying, hey, we need to follow Mafia 1 and 2, not 3, because I just personally don't think this structure of an open world works for the Mafia franchise. 1 and 2 are technically open world games, but they're, it's there to enhance the time period. It's there to enhance the world itself. The world is enhancing the world. Maybe it sounds weird, but it serves other purposes other than, hey, go around and do the same 2 to 4 things like 1,000 times. So this is an example, by the way, of why bigger does not always mean better. When they say, hey, we're going to fill this open world with side stuff to do, just because you added stuff does not mean that you added good stuff, which I think some people sometimes don't think about. But, again, does this game have strengths? Lincoln is a huge strength of this game. I think he's awesome. I think he's an interesting character, and I can respect how they've done this with Tommy, Vito, and Lincoln. So I didn't know Lincoln's entire arc. Okay, that's one thing I guess going into it right now. Again, I remember the beginning. I remember the structure of the game and kind of the feel of the game, but I didn't know like the entire story. So, this is a classic, a classic revenge story, and it's pretty simplistic, but I like the fact that they kind of throw these, like Lincoln loses himself, right? Like throughout this game, you kind of see this guy who, Father James, right? Like he tries to remind him, like, hey, don't forget what you're doing here. Like, I'm around and we've talked about this, but like, don't lose yourself. Don't go further than you need to go. And even that is a little ambiguous where it's like, okay, a pastor, is trying to, kind of give him advice as to how to take all these people out. But, Lincoln throughout it just has this lust for revenge. And, a revenge story, if you're literally just going out to take people out, which in a lot of ways, there are a lot of missions, that's literally what you do. I think what's enhanced by it is the other characters, and sometimes Lincoln remembering or other characters reminding him where it's like, hey, like you're losing yourself, and he's just changing, right? He's just, by the end of the game, you get a choice, and I did not know that. So there was a lot, towards the end that I did not know of. Whenever I would make deals or like give the districts out and everybody would yell at me, I thought, okay, why is the game just always yelling at me? Well, it turns out they can actually turn on you. Now, funny enough, I went through no guide, no nothing, and I got through. All of them survived. I actually chose to leave, so I chose the exit strategy, let's say, but I kept them all alive. Nobody mutinied me. I didn't have to go out and take any of them out. I felt very proud of myself once I found out, hey, they can actually turn if you don't, almost make it even. Like if you give all the districts to one person, you're definitely going to lose the other two. Never actually did that. I always tried to do a very, I don't know, like everybody's going to get their fair share, right? I definitely have a, like Vito and me, we go way back, right? We go back to the last game, but, I wanted to make it kind of fair with the other ones as well. So, again, Lincoln, there's enough complexity there that I do think makes him a good character. I will say, like, the actual cutscenes and the actual story moments in this game are incredible. There are some really big missions, and when they do that, it reminds me of Mafia, and it's like, well, you're playing a Mafia game, but, the main missions in this game. Now, sometimes they're nothing all that special. Sometimes a main mission is just drive down the road and your target's going to basically find you. I died thousands of times in those moments because like there's 3 cars that just come freaking crashing at you. I wasn't prepared, and they just there's like 12 guys there and they just kill you immediately. So some of the main missions are not good, I think, whatsoever, and some of them are just very basic, by the books. There's nothing that makes them any different than the side stuff, and that's what happens, by the way, when you have too much side stuff or the side stuff repeats too much. The main stuff, if it's close, it feels all the same, right? Like you have to make the main stuff really deviate, from what you're doing elsewhere to make it special. And sometimes they do it. I would think about kind of the amusement park earlier on in the game, kind of hunting targets. I mean, like, again, some of those targets are not done, I think, all that well, but some of them are, and some of them have more extravagant, missions when you have to, when you stop the boat and then you actually have to go in and take out the 2 targets on the boat. Like, that is a mission, that feels like Mafia 2, I believe, right? Maybe Mafia 1. I've played these games literally back to back to back, so I've lost, I think, what some of these missions are in which game. But, those are missions. Those are, I think, really, I don't want to necessarily call them all that deep, but they have, like, there's high stakes, there's, like, big moments to it. There's sometimes, like, multiple sections to it. I think I talked about that in the Mafia 2 video. That's what I can appreciate, I think, a lot about Mafia 2's missions is, they make them different from each other, sure, but they also have stages, right? And Mafia 1 did it too, right? Like chasing somebody on foot, then it gets into a car chase, then it gets into, okay, you're shooting in the car. Like, there's different levels to it. So this game has it. Like, that's the tough thing, and I can only imagine, like, being part of this fandom back when this game came out, because I really don't think all that much would have changed, right? Like, when the game is trying to be Mafia, I think it does it. I think it maybe has the weakest character of the 3, but it's got a solid enough character. It's got a perfectly fine, supporting cast. I think it's got a pretty good villain, like Marcano and his whole, like, his son, obviously, but then, like, everybody else around him. Like, they do enough that makes them, like, pretty cool. There's a lot of personality in those characters, and also, like, in the game, that's another thing that they did absolutely nail. I mean, the game's a little bit old, so the visuals, I mean, they still hold up. The visuals look really good. Now, there are some very bad glitches, very bad bugs. There's a lot of pop-ins. It's not a perfect game, okay? Sometimes when it rains, I understand, I think, what they're going for in terms of, like, the lighting and how things kind of reflect and all that stuff. Sometimes when it rains, the game looks like some of the worst, visuals I've ever seen in a video game. It almost gets, like, confused of what it's supposed to look like. But overall, like, when you're driving through those streets, they did nail it again. The setting, the time period, they did it. Like, it feels like that, and it, it feels so different, right? Because obviously, like, we're jumping up in terms of time period and totally new location, in the South, and they did such an awesome job of, like, the bayous and all this stuff. Like, I don't know, it's really good. It feels good, and it's a very, very big world, right, that you're going to be driving through, quite a bit. So, I just want to kind of give them props where they deserve it. Like, the story had moments, the main missions at times, had moments. The combat and stuff, I guess, if you're talking about stealth and whatnot, you have to be careful with the stealth. Like, even if you're crouched and you're walking at a normal speed, the enemy will actually still hear you, so you actually have to move the analog stick, like, slower. Didn't love that, but I guess that makes sense. Obviously, the hand-to-hand combat and the stiffness is, it's not completely gone, because, like, when you have a shotgun, or really you have any gun, and you're trying to turn, like, left and right, say an enemy just decides to, like, go to your left and you have to move, good luck, God bless you, because it's very hard to turn Lincoln when he's kind of locked into shooting. But beyond that, there is a little bit more, like, jump to a step, and, you can run up to somebody and just beat them, and do the melee kind of option, which I very much appreciate, because because up until this point, we've never had these things like that. Some of the, I guess, like what they're building with, okay, the districts and these different people, and they bring in revenue and kick back to you, but they also have their own perks, right? Like you can lose the cops with one. You can call like the ammo, and which I use the ammo so much, or the cars you use so much. So again, I can appreciate, they're trying to go into the open world thing. Now we're obviously building to all of the stuff they did wrong, which was quite a bit, by the way. Like this is going to take up a good part of this video, but I want to give credit where credit's due. And I do think at times, even when they're going for this open world thing, they did good. And when they're going for it, when they're trying to make big missions. Oh, and let me throw in one other thing. I actually think the DLCs of all 3 DLCs, story DLCs, they might be better than the base game. And I was realizing while playing it, because I played it literally in the middle. Like I was maybe 10, 12, 15 hours in. And I said, okay, I know that it said like the DLCs were unlocked. I said, okay, I'm going to go into it. Those DLCs are so much fun. You got like a ghost one. You got kind of like the action one with Donovan, right? Which is like, the stuff that they pull in those missions is exactly what I wanted more of in the base game, right? Because, and you know why? And I think it's actually very obvious why. They're just main missions. You go to an area, you talk to people, you investigate, with some of them, you shoot up things with other ones, like, you do whatever. Some of the story moments of these things are like the Father James one, of that entire story is so freaking good, and that's probably where you get the most emotion out of Lincoln in the entire game. Now, it doesn't necessarily make all that much sense that he has that much of a connection to her. Maybe not, but it's so good. It is so good. So it actually made me jealous, because it was like, man, when they're just focusing on the main story and you're just jumping from mission to mission, that's where they nailed it. And these came out after, right? So maybe they had a little bit of time to realize like what the pros of the game were, what were the cons. But I want to throw that in, because we don't have to go through them too much, or even the stories. But I thought they were all very different. They kind of had, each of them had their own theme of like what the whole arc was going to be. But they absolutely nailed those. And again, it just reminded me that's like when they're going for in those main missions, or some of the gunfights, or some of the locations, or some of the performances, like it feels like a Mafia game. You can tell when it feels like a Mafia game and when it doesn't. So let's go into, when it doesn't. This is something, again, I remember doing just a little bit, because I didn't make it all that far originally, but going in, I remembered, okay, what's the main thing with this game? The main complaint of this game is that you do the same thing over and over and over again, right? And that's 1,000% true, because what this game generally breaks down to is each region has 2 people. Actually, it's always 2, right? Each area has 2 people that you go to, and then they're going to give you a list of things to do. And so you can take out people, you can do like assassinations, you can, they're sometimes different, like say sabotaging something, right? You'll light things on fire. Now, what you're lighting on fire will be different actually from time to time, but you're still lighting it on fire, right? You're still breaking into a compound. A lot of the compounds look the same. What actually always upset me is I would try to do most things. So I would definitely always do the assassinations, right? Because those characters would actually protect the main target at the end of the day. So you don't have to, but it's best to take them out when you can. So I would always do that, break into a couple areas, dismantle something or whatever. But like the character that you're going for at the end will be in a building that's the exact same as one of those other, like the rackets that you had to break into. So it's the exact same layout. Now maybe it's like, well, I've already done this, so I know how to sneak around. Also, what's kind of funny about the whole thing is when you're going after that main target to then give the district to one of your people, right? If you just take out them and you manage to do like the holding square or holding circle, whatever it is, and you grab them, you can sneak by everybody, just take them out, and everybody else will literally walk away, versus any other time they will not walk away, they'll attack you. So that was a nice little trick that I just kind of found by doing it, where it's like, oh, I don't have to take out 20, I could take out 3, take out the main target, and just do it quick enough where nobody could get to me by then. So, there's little gamey ways to, to get around it, to make it a little bit faster, because this is the worst part of the game. This is what makes the game, I would say, in these moments just bad. And here's the thing. Are the mechanics actually bad? Not really. Again, things are fundamentally fine. Like, driving in this game is probably the best that we've experienced because of the time period. Now, at the same time, though, let's do pro and con. The cops in this game are horrendous. I mean, like, if you're in a car chase with some of these cops, sometimes it's impossible to escape them. I've been in chases where they've shot out 3 of my tires. So it's like, what are you supposed to do? I mean, it gets infuriating. And there was a couple moments in this game where it's like, okay, the objective is to lose the cops. That, I don't know if it was just me. And I didn't really look this stuff up. I try to come at this with an original opinion, 8-9 years later. But I don't know if it's just me. I think many people should be very upset about this. I'm definitely upset about it. But the cops, I mean, they are very sensitive, and they will not leave you alone. And if you're in a car chase, I just feel it's way too difficult. Yeah, you can shoot out their tires, but man, if they shoot out 1 or 2 of yours, you're never going to lose them. Because they're always going to throw another one at you, kind of like coming from the front, and you're never going to make that circle like go behind you. It's always going to be following you. So I hated it. So like, while the cars were better, the mechanics that they did with the cars were far, far worse. It was more annoying. Things like, again, like just repeating stuff. Again, was it all that bad? I mean, I like the crowbar mini game, but I mean, doing it 50 to 100 times, actually, it was way more than that. 50 is definitely a low end. Doing it so many times, no. Did I like it at the end? I wouldn't say I liked it. I would say I tolerated it, right? I mean, in towards the beginning of this game, like I said, I was kind of going for 100% at some point. I was going for all the collectibles. I was going for all of the boxes to break them open and to like wiretap them. I was doing all of them. Now, eventually, I just stopped because I was like, there's way too many. Each one, I think, requires 3 of those like green things. So it's like, I'm not going to go around and find 500 of these things. I'm just not going to do it. So, and that is, I think, the classic definition, or maybe not definition is the right word, but like, that is them chasing trends. And that's something that I probably couldn't have figured out back in the day, or especially with how little I played it. But like, and that's the cool thing, I guess, honestly, about looking back at it and saying, okay, like, what can you learn from this? Like, truly, there should be lessons. It's not just about bashing it or saying that you love it. What are some lessons that you can learn from it? You can tell when they're just chasing trends. Like, those things are just them saying, okay, we need to pad the game. There's nothing about that besides padding the game, because there's nothing that makes it fun. You're running around, you're finding the same thing, same collectibles, and all you're doing, really, I thought it was like part of the story at first. All you're doing is making it so you can see anything in that area, right? You'll be able to, I mean, yeah, if you complete an area, you kind of get perks, but generally, it's just to find where like the Playboys are, or the vinyls are, or whatever they are. Like, that's all it really is to find. It's just to help you find collectibles. So it's like, nah, that's not exciting to me. And then, yeah, when you go into an area, and most of those main missions, okay, and even like the side stuff, like to get to Vito and all of them, Burke and stuff, like, in order to do that, you have to, I mean, some of those did involve some pretty cool story moments. Again, that's where the game shines. But so much of the padding, I mean, really what this game did, let's sum it up here, okay? What this game did is take those, remember we talked about this in Mafia 1 and 2, there's those really big missions, okay? And they both do it. I think 2 has a little bit more variety and just does it better, but they have those big story missions. So Mafia 3 took those and said, okay, we can't make another game that's 6 hours long. It needs to be like 30 hours long. So what we need to do, we're still going to have the same amount of big missions. There's only going to be like 5 or 10 the whole thing. There's going to be the cutscenes in this documentary that's going on, which is really cool. I like that. I like the flashing back and forward. I even like that, again, based off the ending, really the purpose for why they're even interviewing all these people, it's kind of different. Because you could be interviewing them for like, hey, like, what did you think of Lincoln because he's dead now? Or what did you think of Lincoln now he's too powerful to touch? Or what did you think about Lincoln now he's disappeared and nobody can find him? Like, a lot of that background stuff of flashing back and forth and back and forth, I actually, I thought that made it, again, pretty different. I think that is a little bit of personality that this game has. But all that other stuff is not personality. It's just, hey, we have personality. We got maybe 10 hours of it, but we need to triple that time. So we are going to just load this game down with the same things over and over. In order to do those 10 main missions, missions, you're going to have to do 50 of the exact same thing over and over and over. And none of it's going to be terrible because the combat's fine and gunfights are fine. In fact, you could maybe argue they're better than ever. They're still not amazing, and that's kind of also the problem, though, right? Like, it still feels like Mafia in the sense that it's a little bit stiff. It's, it tries to go with the times, it tries to go with the weapons. Okay, cool, but then you're making us do it so much. I mean, that's something I've found so often where it's like, okay, it's still Mafia. Don't throw 15 enemies at me directly in front of me when you know what kind of game this is. This is not a game where you're able to, like, sprint down the street and run away from them. They'll kill you. And I tried that. I would get cornered by people sometimes and say, okay, I'm just going to make a run for it, and they'll shoot me. And the death animations are kind of cool because it's kind of like slow and like drawn out. But it's like, it gets annoying because it's like, well, this is Mafia. You're not really equipped to take out 15 enemies in front of you, and yet so much of this game can get you into that situation. So I think a lot of this game was them losing what makes Mafia Mafia. It's still there. It's just buried. 1 and 2, it's all that's there. And you can argue there's weaknesses with that too. Like, I'm not here to tell you those are perfect games, but they are Mafia games for better or worse. This is partially a Mafia game, and then it's like 66% not one, and they just throw it all in. So I'm very happy that we're not going back to this. I think there's lessons you can learn from this, both good, like you can take stuff from this and continue with it. I'm not saying it's all bad, but I mean, I'm glad we're like moving past it and going to Mafia 1 and 2. I would say I'm happy that I did this, but I mean, I put more time into this than Death Stranding 2 as of right now. And it's like, man, I got to get my priorities straight. But, in some ways, I'm happy I did. I'm happy I went through the trilogy right before the Old Country, but it was way too long. Like, once I got to like hour 20, once I was doing the DLC, and then I went back to the main stuff and still realized it's still 2 characters you talk to, 2 separate things you do in each region, and then you take out your main target. It kept going, and by hour 20, I was done. I was really like, okay, I want this to be over. I stopped going for like the 100%, and I just try to do the main stuff, hence why I have so much side stuff just built up, and I will never do that. Just so the record is clear forever, I'm never going back to that game to do the side stuff, unless there's a overwhelming demand for me to get the platinum for some reason. So there's my thoughts on it. You guys let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.